Hello, everyone, and welcome to It's Simple, Really. It's a podcast when we take you to a journey to the center of the earth and back. No, not really. We unpack some of the most common concepts in the business world and in our life and actually put them to the test. So, welcome to the podcast. A common belief is that you need to wait for something to happen in order to be happy. That's how most people live. I'll be happy when I get a new job, or I will be really happy when I'm promoted, or you know what? I'm going to be exceptionally happy if my boss retires. I'm happy when I'm lose weight, or the weather is going to be better, or when the pandemic is over, and the list goes on. It really does go on forever with multiple different variations. So I'm going to ask Greg specifically today how he feels about that. And Greg, what do you say about this belief that you need to wait for something to happen in order to be happy? In other words, what is that magic thing? What is that silver bullet that's going to make you happy, me happy, everyone happy?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. It's funny because, for when I look back and I think of most of my career, all of those statements you kind of just went through really hit home for me. I mean, that's kind of the way I felt about things a lot. I think back the first 11 years of my career I spent at the same company. And in those 11 years, I did 7 different jobs. And it kind of seemed like every time I was starting to get tired of a job and not happy and whatever, suddenly I would get promoted and be given another $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever it was.
Sure.
And in the moment, it was like, all my hard work was paying off. This is going to make me happy. And for a short time, it did. I mean, you kind of got out of whatever the grind is that you were working on and moved to something new and exciting. And I don't know if you've had the same experience, but before too long, the new grind is getting you down and the $5,000 or $10,000 is spent. And you really find yourself back feeling the way you were feeling before. And I kind of went through this cycle, like I said, 7 times in 11 years. And fast forward to, the end of 2019, which was when I left my last job. And that's 24 years after I started my career. And it was the same thing, I wasn't happy in that role. And I don't know, it was kind of like in this space of like waiting for something to happen to make me happy. And it's for that whole period of time, I would say, it's not so much that I wasn't happy. When I look back, I think I was more neutral. Like I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't happy either. I was just kind of neutral. And then you were going to say something? Sorry.
I was going to say something. So what's happy for you? Like what you're saying, like in retrospect, happiness wasn't actually being happy, it was just being neutral. So what would happiness mean for you?
Well, I'd say I would have happy moments, but when I talk about being happy, I mean consistently being happy, waking up with a smile on my face. I was on a course this weekend and somebody said, his goal was to wake up with elation for the new day. Like when I heard that, I was like, that how great would that be to wake up every morning with that kind of feeling about what the day had to hold. And it's funny, I was reminded of a boss I used to have. And every morning I'd see him and say good morning to him. How you doing? And he'd say, never been better. And after a while, I kind of got tired of it. And I thought, like, who the hell is this guy? Because at the time I would think like, when I thought one night, I said, when was legitimately the last time I could actually say I've never been better and have it be true? And I was thinking back, like maybe when I was in university, I was like partying and like living the life, probably that if I'd have to go back that far to say, that never been better. Like it might, slow down curve since then, until recently. So as you know, I've been taking courses with Jamie Smart and getting introduced to a whole bunch of new stuff. And I was getting coached by him, and he kind of introduced me to this understanding, which can best be described as the inside out understanding.
What is that?
So everything we just talked about is
Yep.
the opposite. That's the outside in misunderstanding, which is really what most people live in, and which I lived in for most of my life, which is that the things outside of you, the things that are acting on you, your job, other people, your circumstances, the weather, the pandemic, that has something to do and is in control of your life and your happiness. And when you realize that that's not how life actually works, life is actually, the way things actually work is inside out.
So
It becomes free. And so
you mean like you're projecting onto the world your internal feelings? Is that what you're saying?
Not so much projecting your feelings onto the world, but the best way to put it is, to explain kind of where our experience comes from. So the way our experience is generated, like most people think of the world is out there as like you're looking at the world through your eyes, like looking out a window.
Yep.
But in fact, what's happening is your eyes and your ears, all your senses are collecting data, and your mind is turning it into your perceptual reality. So what we experience is an internally generated perceptual reality. So we don't ever actually directly experience the world. We are experiencing an internally generated version of the world. So when I say that it comes from the inside, your experience is being generated by your mind every moment of your life, moment to moment to moment. What you're experiencing is internally generated reality. Now, why is that important, or why is that a game changer? Mm-hmm. So the reason falling into an understanding of the inside out nature of life is a game changer is because you start to realize what actually is real and what's not, and you can live in the moment. So if you think about like a lot of what causes people stress and anxiety is future events, right? So, and I think most people would agree the future doesn't exist by its very definition. It has yet to happen. So it's not real. Anything you think about the future. So when you have a job interview coming up, or a meeting with a client, or preparing to do a podcast and you're getting nervous about it, you're creating all those thoughts yourself. Like they're not real. They're just internally generated thoughts. They feel real. The feelings feel real, but the feelings are just telling you about what you're thinking about, what your thought is generating. Similarly, the past was real when it was happening, but then would have been called the present. Now it's just a memory, and you're just thinking about something that was real at one time. And if you think about depression, is largely associated to reliving and remembering stuff that happened, and it doesn't discount the fact that it happened, but anything you feel about what happened in the past, you're also generating. And so it creates this situation where when you realize that that's what's happening, when you're feeling a certain way, you can fall out of it very quickly, and you can let it go. You don't have to carry. And that's the experience I've had recently. Like I've had years of baggage of different things and stuff that, I don't know, probably because I thought the world had told me you had to carry that stuff around with you. And in one conversation with a coach, boom, vanished, gone. So
hang on a second. I mean, logically, everything you're explaining makes a lot of sense. And you're right. I mean, I've never thought about it this way, but we do process the world through whatever neurons are firing off in our heads.
Yeah.
So everyone does it the same.
Yeah.
But then doesn't what you say discount the whole notion of human experience? I mean, most of the time when people stress about things, it's as a result of something that they already know to be true because it happened in the past. And I'll give you an example. When I watch my son, who's very young, he doesn't have many experiences. So he lacks emotions like fear because he doesn't know what it means to fall off, a high surface.
That's right.
He doesn't have many of those preconditioned or things that one could argue keep human beings alive.
Yeah.
So your stress towards a future event usually is a result of something you know to be true, that I don't know, walking into this conversation is going to make you feel uncomfortable because of the dynamic that you have with the person you're going to be talking to.
Yeah.
It doesn't. So my question to you is, it doesn't discount that future from becoming present.
Yeah.
And more often than not, you are proven to be correct in the fact that you have walked into that conversation and it was unpleasant because of X, Y, and Z.
Or was it unpleasant because you thought it would be unpleasant in the first place?
You're turning the tables on me. But
I'm glad you mentioned your son, because it's a children are a perfect example, right, of our true nature, because they haven't been around long enough to be conditioned to think otherwise, right? So if you ever watch your son, or just kids in general, they're a bit of an emotional roller coaster, but they self-correct very quickly and they move on. They can go from the depths of despair 1 second to the heights of joy and laughter the next second.
That's
and they don't hold on to those feelings or whatever. And I don't know if I had this experience when my kids were little. They'd fall down at the park or off their bike or something, and the first thing they do is they turn around and look at mommy and daddy. And if mommy and daddy are going, "Oh my God, are you okay?" then they start wailing. And if you just sit there calm and you just go, "You okay? Yeah, okay," they just get up and brush themselves off and off they go. Now, barring like serious injuries, if it's a bad scrape or I don't know, whatever, there's certainly an element of physical discomfort and pain that could elicit a reaction. But mostly, if it's just something that is scared, they look to their parents for the cues onto how am I supposed to react to this experience. And it's funny you mentioned it turns out, and I've only heard Jamie talk about this, so I don't actually have the proof myself.
Okay.
But so this is third-hand storytelling, but it's there's lots of studies that actually prove that as a species, we're terrible at predicting how we're going to feel in the future. So, have you ever thought of an event, you're going to go to a company function or something, you're dreading it because it's going to be miserable, and you go there and it turns out to actually be a great event, you have a great time? Well, that's an example where you were terrible at predicting how you were going to feel in the future. Conversely, you were going to go to a movie or a show or do something, you thought this is going to be an amazing time, and it sucked. So those are other examples of how we're terrible at predicting how we're going to feel in the future.
So what you're saying to me is that when we believe as humans, is when we believe that we know what's going to happen, we really don't, and we for lack of a better term, manifest the outcome because of what
we're thinking. Exactly.
Okay. Well, so, I mean,
so I mean, and this is like, my experience recently. Like my sister was over not too long ago, and she's like, "I've noticed you've been very, so much happier lately." And I'm like, "Yeah, I have been." And it's like, and I've been going to do things with my kids or go to the movies or go play hockey or whatever. And I'm like, that's the most fun I've had doing that in as long as I can remember. And I'm sure some of it is, coming out of the pandemic when any experience outside the four walls of our house is like, we just have been longing for that for, a year and a half. But at the same time, when you start living and not so much living out of this understanding, but when you awaken to this understanding, I'm just finding myself living more in the moment and enjoying the moment. Like I was walking the dog the other day and I noticed how beautiful and deep blue the sky was and how the clouds were formed. And I'm thinking to myself, like, who the hell have I become here? Like I never would have noticed anything like that before. I would have just been like, how soon can I get back into the house with this stupid dog so I can get on the couch and watch TV again? So it's, just speaking from my own personal experience, since I've started understanding this stuff, is, happiness comes from within. And not only does it come from within, but it's our default state. So, if you're not feeling happy, the notion is like underneath whatever it is you're thinking about, you actually are happy. You just forgot or just don't realize it because you've layered unhappy thoughts on top of your default state.
Interesting. It's I'm sure some of you who are listening will vehemently disagree and have a bunch of opposing thoughts. Feel free to let us know.
Yeah.
Or if
And you may want to
watching,
know what I've been smoking, which is actually nothing, but
which is surprising. But you know what? This I have to say, as you were describing that last part about the fact that you're inherently happy, you just don't know it or have or choosing to overlook that fact. It almost reminds me of when they talk about gratitude. And I mean, gratitude. Now, hear me out. Hear me out. So here's a hypothesis. When you experience gratitude, or when you start to challenge yourself to think what you're grateful for, you are actually forcing yourself to peel the layers of whatever those blankets or bad thoughts that you have put on top of your happiness. Because when you start thinking about, oh man, it's dreary weather outside. Okay, well, I'm grateful for the fact that I can stay indoors and enjoy the warmth of my house. Okay, so that puts a smile on my face.
Yeah.
Ah, man, tax season again. Well, I'm grateful for the fact that I have a job and that I'm having income or I'm self-employed and I have income that demands that I pay taxes.
Yeah.
Or if, God forbid, if I'm sick as a dog and I'm sitting in bed, well, I'm very grateful that there are a couple of people in this household who are going to show up and ask me how I am.
Yeah.
And so, and when I guess what just happened right now is it's not that I'm trying to convince myself, but I'm trying to rationalize to myself what you've been telling me, because I am a bit skeptical of I still am a bit skeptical of the fact that you can be perpetually happy, because I do believe that life oscillates. It goes up and down. And my favorite saying is, this too shall pass.
Yeah.
So in other words, I don't know if you can stay in a perpetually happy state.
Yeah.
Having said that, never tried, never was
Well,
successful.
I'm not suggesting that you do stay in a perpetual happy state. What you just said is a perfect way to phrase it, which is, this too shall pass. But when you realize that this is how life actually works, the passing happens much faster. Like there's no dwelling. So you're going to have, I'm not saying you'll never have a negative feeling or a bad feeling or whatever. Your feelings are just, it's part of being human, is you're going to feel stuff, right? So you're going to hear something on the news that the government's up to something and it's going to make you mad and whatever. But when you realize that, those feelings aren't actually coming from whatever the news you just heard on the news, they're coming from within you. And then it passes and you go back. It's kind of like what I was saying with children, right? Like they go through a myriad of emotions, but they always reset back to kind of their default happy state. And
so what happens to us as human beings as we grow up?
Well, we're conditioned to believe that we live in an outside-in reality, when in fact we live in an inside-out reality. But
in other words, you're waiting for something to happen for you.
We're in a chronic state of misunderstanding with how our experience is created. So we're waiting for something out there to create the experiences that we want to have. So it's it's funny because Jamie talked about another thing. Like they took a study of people who had accidents become paraplegics or quadriplegics.
Yep.
And they measured somehow their level of happiness before their accident and their level of happiness afterwards. And then they did the same kind of experiment with people that won the lottery. And basically what they concluded is people that were happy before they became paralyzed were still happy years after the fact. People that were unhappy were still unhappy. Same with the lottery winners. People that were miserable before they won the lottery, sure, there's a period of time when they're not miserable, but eventually they're miserable again. and the happy people stay happy. So it's, and there's plenty of billionaires out there that are miserable, or millionaires who's, they're, I think I just read Elon Musk is getting divorced from his wife or something. Bezos got divorced from his wife. And I'm not saying, but it's like money is not like most people think money. I'll be happy if I had Jeff Bezos' money, and you probably would be in some respects. But the money is not the source of the happiness.
Yeah, one person says is never forget the Maslow's pyramid. And for anyone who hasn't encountered that term, it's basically a pyramid of human needs where you have to take care of the lower levels before you can get to the higher levels. So if you don't have shelter or food, those are the things you're going to focus on first. Sometimes people also refer to it in a joking way, like first world problems. That's kind of the idea behind the Maslow's pyramid. So you're just saying, if I understand you correctly, that money just takes you up that pyramid and you have to deal with different kinds of problems.
Yeah, exactly.
You think would be completely alleviated if you just had money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. I buy into that.
I mean, I've never had less money in terms of income in my life than I have now. Even as a teenager, I was making more money than I'm making today. Yet I'm happier today than I've ever been.
I respect you for that, my good man. So for everyone who's been listening to this, if you have a reaction, we'd love to hear from you. And I agree. One message from this episode is definitely do not wait for anything, anyone, any kind of stuff to happen for you to be happy. Because it would really suck if you look back on a day, week, year, your whole life, and then decide, oh man, I should have enjoyed all of that, but now it's gone.
Yeah.
Now that is a terrible realization.
Yeah. Well, what you mentioned about gratitude, and it's timely because this weekend's Thanksgiving here in Canada. So it's a great time to for everyone to kind of reflect on what it is that you're grateful for.
Uncover that hidden happiness inside. That's progress.